What if school didn't feel safe, but instead felt like your first day at work? Walk into a British secondary school in the early 1960s and the atmosphere hits you instantly. Not warmth, weight, the scent of chalk, oil, damp coats, the echo of shoes on hard floors, doors closing with purpose, not comfort. This wasn't a place built around feelings or self-expression. It was a system designed with a clear goal: turn boys into men who could function in the real world, fast. No one talked about finding yourself. Instead, everything pointed towards something else: responsibility, employment, adulthood. And the subjects? They weren't random. Each one quietly shaped what kind of future you were expected to step into. Some of those lessons still exist today, but stripped of their intensity, their urgency, and their message. So what exactly were boys being trained for? Before we step into those classrooms, if you enjoy uncovering hidden parts of British history like this, you might find yourself coming back to Hidden Plates UK. And please subscribe this YouTube channel, because once you see what happened inside those rooms, you'll understand why school felt less like learning and more like preparation for life itself. For many boys, the first shock came in a room that didn't feel like school at all. It felt like a workshop: rows of scarred wooden benches, real saws, sharp chisels, heavy planes that demanded control, the smell of timber hanging in the air, sawdust settling underfoot. There were no safe versions of tools, no softened edges. You were shown what to do and then expected to do it. Cut wrong, start again. Joint doesn't fit? That's on you. Get a splinter, remove it, and carry on. Mistakes weren't written in red pen later. They happened instantly, and you felt them, and that was the lesson. In industrial towns across Britain, this wasn't optional creativity. It was preparation for trades: carpentry, construction, factory work. Many boys would leave school at 15 or 16 and step straight into that world. Then came metalwork, and things got even less forgiving. Cold air, steel sheets, the harsh rasp of files against iron, machines humming in the background. Precision wasn't encouraged. It was demanded. If you drilled wrong or misaligned a piece, it wasn't close enough. It was useless. There was no room for interpretation, only accuracy. Because in places like Birmingham or Sheffield, school wasn't separate from industry. It fed directly into it. And while today these skills are often delayed or heavily regulated, back then the message was simple: pay attention, take responsibility, or it will cost you. But not every lesson was loud or physical. Some demanded something even harder: perfect silence. Step into a technical drawing classroom and everything changes. No noise, no movement beyond the scratch of pencil on paper. Each boy stood at an angled desk, tools laid out with care. Rulers, compasses, set squares. Here, perfection wasn't optional. A line wasn't almost straight. It either was or it failed. An angle wasn't close. It was correct or wrong. Even erasing had to be clean. Before computers ever existed, these drawings mattered. Engineers, builders, machinists, real people would rely on this kind of accuracy. And for many boys, this subject quietly pointed them toward those careers. Then came mathematics, but not the abstract kind many students see today. This was survival math, calculating wages, splitting income into rent and food, measuring materials, working out change quickly without a calculator. Speed mattered, accuracy mattered, because mistakes didn't just lose marks, they lost money. In working-class households, this wasn't theory, it was daily life. At the same time, another discipline ran alongside all of this. Less about numbers, more about behavior. Mornings often began in assembly halls filled with hymns, scripture readings, and moral instruction. Respect, duty, honesty, responsibility. These weren't optional ideas. They were woven into the rhythm of school life, and they didn't stop at the classroom door. Because the next lesson was about the body itself. Physical education didn't mean have fun. It meant structure, lines formed quickly, movements repeated in unison, climbing frames, vaulting horses, equipment that demanded effort, not preference. You didn't opt out, you pushed through. This was a country still shaped by post-war thinking, where endurance and coordination were seen as essential traits. In some schools, elements of military-style drill even remained. Then, in a completely different setting, boys were introduced to something quieter, but just as strict. Typing rooms, rows of heavy machines, keys that required force. The constant clatter of metal arms striking ink ribbons. You learned posture, finger placement, speed. Make a mistake, you couldn't delete it, you fixed it, or started again. Alongside this came formal writing, letters, applications, structured communication. Because for some boys, the future wasn't the factory floor, it was the office. And in technical schools, another layer appeared. Basic mechanical understanding. Engines broken down into diagrams. Pistons, gears, combustion explained piece by piece. Sometimes even real components were present. This wasn't tinkering for fun. It was early exposure to industries that dominated entire towns. Automotive, mining, manufacturing. And through it all, something else was constantly judged. Your handwriting, neat margins, underlined dates, clear structure. Because messy writing wasn't just untidy. It suggested a lack of discipline. Everything pointed to one idea: control how you think, how you move, and how you present yourself. But perhaps the most powerful force shaping these boys was happening quietly behind the scenes. By the mid-teens, many boys weren't just learning, they were already being directed. The education system separated them early. Some moved toward academic routes, advanced subjects, university paths. Others were guided into practical tracks, trades, apprenticeships, immediate work. This wasn't framed as limitation. It was seen as alignment. You weren't asked, "What do you feel like doing?" You were guided toward what you were considered suited for. And every subject reinforced that direction. Woodwork, metalwork, arithmetic, writing, physical training. Together, they built something very specific: competence, reliability, readiness. There was little emphasis on emotional exploration, little space for personal identity. But there was clarity. Boys left school knowing how to measure, calculate, write formally, handle tools, follow instructions, and speak with confidence. Today, education often prioritizes creativity, flexibility, and emotional awareness. Back then, it prioritized function. Neither approach is entirely right or wrong. They reflect the needs of their time. But one truth stands out. For boys in 1960s Britain, school didn't feel like an extension of childhood. It felt like the beginning of adulthood. And maybe the real question isn't which system was better, but whether we've lost something important or finally gained it. If this made you see education differently, I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts below. These conversations make the channel what it is. And if you want more stories that uncover the hidden layers of Britain's past, subscribing helps you stay connected, but only if it's something you'd enjoy.